Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. We have Leo Zagami back again, and we're going to talk about the LA fires. You predicted this quite a while back, Leo. How you doing?
Great, thank you very much. We are lucky enough to have had the only fire that was nearby, fully contained. However, we are still, of course, in a risk zone, and as you know, the Santana winds have started again to batter the area, but especially LA. So we are rather lucky here because usually we have a lot of wind here. In fact, we have a bunch of windmills, as you know, in front of Palm Springs. But it seems like the situation is pretty much under control here. But it's now there is a new fire starting in Ventura. There is still the fires that were the cause for Pasadena, for what happened in Pasadena's. However you spell it, I always get it confused. But it is really unprecedented because it's like they had really worked a plan to make this happen. I tell you what happened. On a Tuesday, usually, Michael, like today, Tuesday morning, I usually go to the supermarket. So once I came out of the supermarket, I received an Amber Alert. It was around 10:30 in the morning. There were no fires in LA. There were no fires here in the area. There was nothing. Suddenly, this Amber Alert, like a critical warning, don't do anything, barbecues anything, Santana winds, danger, red alert. It was a little bit weird and quite alarming because we only received the Amber Alerts when there was Hurricane Hillary. There's never really been this kind of thing. And so I was like, I went back to my wife and I said, I received this thing. What's happening here? But at the same time, the first fire was starting in LA, and then it was more than one, and then there was also one here in the Coachella Valley that was picking up. So suddenly we had 5 fires. But I mean, it was weird because it was like they knew in advance. They gave a warning, and then they did nothing to stop it. And there is 2 possibilities here. But obviously, as you know, I wrote an article, I published it on Zagami.com, and my view is that, of course, it's being planned and orchestrated, like many other people now are starting to say, to benefit this Smart LA 2028 project that has been in the making for 6 years. However, either it's the incompetence or either it's the malevolence. The Democrats have definitely lost potential voters because now there is a bunch of people that are pissed off and desperate. We have been receiving in the last 48 hours a lot of people in the Coachella Valley, in Palm Springs, Palm Desert, and also in Indio that are displaced from this event. So there is, of course, the possibility of receiving assistance, food, water, and whatnot. However, I mean, we are talking about a fire that will change, I think, forever the political landscape of California, regardless of the fact that smirky Newsom is there kind of smiling, moving his hands like, we are doing this and that, and it's 2.0 LA, and we are all ready. And his gel hair. I was kind of surprised. Everything is going on fire. Gel goes on fire very easily in this situation. So he was risking a lot during the fires by going around with his gel. I was expecting him
to get on that booth.
I mean, we have we have all these trees that don't burn, but also we have trees that burn, especially the palms. They seem to be prone to get immediately on fire. And if you think about it, the palm is a little bit like having a bit of hair on your head, so yeah, boom. Expecting maybe Newsom to go on fire, but it didn't happen. And it's obvious that he's not that desperate. He doesn't have any empathy. And the same thing for Mayor Bass in LA. She made this message also smiling, and I mean, these people should be really sad about what's happening. They should be feeling for the pain and suffering that people are going through in the affected areas. Instead, they're there smiling, and aside from, like I said, the ones that the accusations they receive mostly is their incompetence. But once again, this seems to be a malevolent act. It seemed to be a planned act for many years, especially in volume 7 and 9. I have pointed out on the development of the Agenda 2030, that is, of course, introducing the smart cities. And at the same time, we have also the smart LA, which is part of this whole Agenda 2030, which then also connects with the Great Reset of Klaus Schwab and company, which is telling you that you will be happy and own nothing. And if you think about it, I mean, we are moving towards an age in which people, they prefer crypto rather than gold. But crypto is not something tangible. You prefer to have all your information on a phone rather than in a book. You prefer to have movies on streaming rather than having ownership over a DVD or previously a VHS tape. That means that we are really going towards a world where you really own nothing. And of course, my idea was also to connect it to this experiment that is taking place that nobody has been talking about, aside from briefly the Daily Mail, I think, made an article. There is an experiment that Toyota is starting this summer in Japan. And it's an experiment that wants to bring you the ultimate form of smart city. It's an experiment. I mean, you know that Toyota is a highly influential company, also here in California. I mean, we are talking about here in America, also one of the most sold car makers in the US, Toyota. And Toyota is planning the ultimate living lab that it's mixing elements of the traditional smart cities with even more advanced concepts, so they can bring you the ultimate smart city. And that ultimate smart city is probably what they want to also bring to LA once this crisis is finished. What does it mean, the ultimate smart city? It means drones, robots, and everything dealt with by an artificial intelligence. And like you have possibly read in the City of Los Angeles Information Technology Agency document that is, of course, present online, these elected leaders, who are all a bunch of woke leftists, because that's what they are in LA, they formed what is called the Smart City Committee, that is composed of 24 departments that are working on making LA the #1 digital city. But of course, if you want to make LA the #1 digital city in 2028, and you have still a structure, let's say architectonically also, that is based on a century ago, it's difficult then to upgrade it without destroying everything and making what the ancient Romans used to call tabula rasa, which means to completely destroy something to then possibly rebuild it. And in volume 7 of my confession, I had written their plan is to push you out of the cities so they can transform them in so-called smart cities under the control of cyber Satan. Now, and you're showing, of course, the article here on the screen, which is very good as a reference. I had also added in the same book that we are entering the darkest of ages as we approach 2030 and the AI takeover. And in volume 9 of my Confessions, I also added other elements because, as you know, in volume 9, I focused on the ultimate development, because here we're talking about soon also the quantum computer reality, which is becoming manifesting. And it was only maybe the beginning of December when Google announced the quantum chip, which is admitting that this quantum chip will actually lead us into other dimensions, because the actual capacity of calculating is so incredible. And in volume 9 that you have showed, in fact, I also say that the World Economic Forum zealots, the corrupt Freemasons, the Bilderbergers, controlled by the Jesuits and financed by the Sabatian Frankists, this to give also an idea of my perspective of the ultimate pyramid of power on top, is going to push the construction of smart cities or 15-minute cities. Like I said to you a moment ago, to do something like this in a city with an old architecture, an old structure like LA, the only solution was to completely erase it. So
like
yep. And then I have another thing to say. A guy that I know, he has a villa, big. He had a house completely destroyed, $5 million, and the day after, the smoke was still emerging from the ash, from the ruins, and the developers already arrived there and offered him $750,000 cash. So I mean, if you are in a situation like that, no? I mean, this is obvious that, I mean, how did these speculators arrive immediately on the remains of your home and offered you 750 for something that is worth 5 times more? It's quite incredible. It seems like there is already a plan. There is already people in place. The fact that Newsom admitted on NBC that they have been working on LA 2.0, as he called it, it's almost an admission. But also his body language showed this admission, because he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't sad enough. Just like the mayor wasn't distraught. And she even went to Ghana when everybody knew that these winds were coming. I mean, it was like the most anticipated disaster I ever heard of. Because on the contrary of disasters that happen from one moment to the next, and you are like, oh, shit. This one was like, we had 3 or 4 days in which they were saying, oh, the Santana winds are coming, red flag alert, this, that, and all the other. Then suddenly I receive a Amber alert, woo, and there was nothing. And then,
wow, you're the first person I heard say that. That's pretty impressive.
No, but I mean, it's
and they had it all planned.
They had, I mean, but the fact that, you are there coming out of a supermarket, there was a lot of wind, everything was, but this happens all the time in Palm Springs, that we have a lot of wind. So I didn't even think about anything,
sure.
But I was shocked about the Amber Alert. I thought, this is a little bit weird. Why are they warning me to do something like this? To be, and suddenly we had the problem also in Coachella, in the Coachella Valley, but fortunately, like I said, it was contained, the actual fire that we had here in the valley. The tire fire was contained, and the vegetation, yes, went on fire. We had 11 acres that went on fire. We had a couple of buildings that went on fire, but like I said, it was fully contained. There was, I think, 2 homes destroyed. And that's about it. But it erupted on Wednesday, approximately a few hours after I received that emergency. So it was like very much like everybody knew that it was about to happen. Something was about to happen. Everything was kind of planned. It seemed like it was planned. And I was pretty shocked myself to witness and I will not call it, like I said, I don't want to call it incompetence, because when I knew that they will do this, sooner or later they will displace the people, but I thought that it would be more gradual, because as you know, I moved here in 2019, and I came actually here to live a few months in 2014. I was in Long Beach. I used to go in and out of LA all the time to visit my friend Sean Stone, and we used to spend a lot of time together. So I used to go in and out all the time of LA, and I saw how LA was, all those areas. Suddenly in 2019, I saw all these homeless people, all these encampments, this sudden change that became even worse with the pandemic. So when you are changing the city, then you are actually destroying the quality of life. And in fact, a lot of these people that now have lost their homes, maybe it was their second home, but a lot of stars, Hollywood stars, had already sold their home in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Because Hollywood is no longer, I mean, while we had the pandemic, like I wrote in volume 8 of my confession, that, as you know, is dedicated to Hollywood. Newsom made it even worse for the people who were filming movies or TV series, because aside from not giving any tax breaks, he demanded everybody to be vaccinated, everybody to be strictly adherent to his protocol. And a lot of actors, thank you for showing this book, because this book shows you really the story of all these people. Yeah?
Great stuff in here. It's just like every page. And I know I hate to get off track, but
No.
your volume 9, I love that it's 7 chapters, and then you go into 7. So I always wonder why is the Pentagon 7 floors? Why is the CIA 7 floors? And all these other like big, all the top GSA, all these different contract and 3-letter agencies, 7 floors, and then you talk about it, how it's all written. They're all in code. It's Illuminati. It's all Illuminati. I'm like, God. We're
esoteric
when this stuff. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Oh. In fact, the Pentagon in itself, I also wrote at the end, I saw that you are featured in I have it here. Yes, here we have. You are featured in this CCC publication catalog, which has also your book, aside from mine. I saw that you were in it. And in fact, here is your Intuitive Warrior. Then we have, I was happy to see you also together with me in this catalog. But in this catalog, there is also a book, The Invisible Master, as you know. And at the end of The Invisible Master, I talk about the fact that the Pentagon is actually not just a structure built out of thin air, but is based on esoteric principles that are very ancient. And in fact, the number 7 that you mentioned, that I discussed profusely in number 9, it's connected to the 7 stars, the 7 planets, to, of course, the references to the various angels and so on. So, I mean, the reference of number 7 is definitely not casual, and it is very symbolic, because the energies in the universe, we are ruled almost by the number 7. That's why I divided this book, volume 9, in 7 imaginary steps that will lead you bit by bit in understanding this new world disorder. So it's like you have the 7 deadly sins, you have the 7 heavenly virtues. The importance of the number 7 is also all over speculative Freemasonry, but it's also in other secret societies that are part of the Illuminati network, if you want to define it this way. And the number 7 was also very important for the Pythagoreans. And so the concept of the heptad is very important. And it's like they thought that the 7 was almost like the father of all things. And I think that is important for people to understand that all the buildings that the Freemasons built around the sacred geometry, they are not simply built because they look cool, no? But because they reflect the universal energies and structures. We can say that in nature, we see a reflection of sacred geometry, even in plants or in other things that are not man-made. So it's part of the way the universe works. And I think that the actual, when we say sect, no, we say sect. A sect, though, in Italian, for example, more close to Latin, is said sette, which means 7.
Huh.
So a sect is connected to the number 7 as a principle. And also you have the god Set, which is itself connected to the number 7. And it's also interpreted as the Egyptian version of Satan. That's why you have the Temple of Set of the now defunct Michael Aquino, which is, as you know, one of the protagonists instead of my latest book, number 11, on mind control. So we are in our society, in a way, directed by symbols, no, and guided by symbols, and we, nothing is left to chance. The Chinese also have an incredible understanding of the energy of the universe and how it moves, it shapes, and that's why the homes, their homes are built respecting what they call the chi energy, no? And also when, for example, you are sleeping, you should always sleep in a certain way with your head facing the north rather than the south. And that's why that's also very important in the way you position yourself and your bed within your own home. There is a certain energy that also, when it comes to martial arts, you know, people are always astonished about the immense agility and power of Bruce Lee and the way that he was so, you know, quick in moving, almost a Superman. You know, you can't really, but it's not only the way he moves, it's the way that he moves along the energy that he moves. Because when it comes to Qigong, for example, it's about the energy that you move. And so it's not about only the physical brutal force, because sometimes you can have a little Chinese guy that maybe is not as doesn't have the muscles you have, Michael, but he could kick your ass. I'm sorry, you know.
So,
you're like,
we were talking about symbology, and the number 7. The fire started on day 7.
Yeah.
And it's also day 7 is also the Orthodox Christians' date for the birth of Christ. Yeah. So they're not fond of that, and then the symbology, and then they diss Christ and Christianity and whenever they can. So.
Well, I mean, definitely they are anti-Christian in nature. However, going back to the number 7, you have the 7 metals as a form. I mean, you have also concepts connected to the number 7, which are also alchemical. And the fire is a transformation that is both physical as well as metaphysical. So you are setting everything on fire externally, but there is also an internal value for that fire of regeneration. And this is what I kind of noticed when Mel Gibson, who lost everything, talked. No, he was very. You can see that he has a lot of philosophical knowledge inside him. He's not like most Hollywood stars, a materialist. Because if you're a materialist and you lose matter, meaning you lose a 14.5 million home, you will be really, really upset. No? In fact, they went and picked up Harrison Ford, and he was almost in tears, and the police brought him in their car, and he was like, and most of these stars are really upset. Why? Because on the contrary of Mel Gibson, who I think has a more spiritual connection, and a godly connection, because that I see him also very much connected with God, just like you, Michael. I'm sure that if you lost something, the main thing would be your family is still well. And that was the same thing that Gibson said. Obviously, we are upset when we lose physical things that maybe we cherish, like old books or things, all kind, your clothes or your whatever. I mean, your car set on fire. It's definitely very upsetting. But in the end, what counts is you, your wife, your animals, if you have some, or your family is the most important thing in these situations. And so that is at one point I saw Mel Gibson talking about the fire like a regeneration element, almost. He was kind of picking up on that alchemical, because fire is like I said, it's of course at the basis of our civilization. We will not have developed without fire. And at the same time, fire is dangerous. But fire has esoteric meaning. It was like worshipped by the ancient Zoroastrians that will have, like always the fire. It's a symbol, like I said, of purification. Of course, in Christianity, fire symbolizes the presence of the divine. Think about Moses when he set the bush on fire and he enters in contact with God through an archangel, later on through the Metatron that puts him in contact with God, that will deliver him later on Mount Sinai the Ten Commandments. So I think that fire has a lot of symbolism, and the fact that we find fire now destroying a place like Hollywood, and seeing Jimmy Kimmel almost in tears because him and his of course nobody is happy about people suffering or people, but it is also true that if we have to really dig deep in what Hollywood has represented in the last 110 years, let's say 115 years since it started to make movies, I think that we will find that there is definitely a satanic element, an infernal element almost. So it's like that is, but at the same time, Cyber Satan has always a plan. So the plan is to replace something old with something new and even more diabolic. Because in the cities of the future, it's all about like this experiment that Toyota is conducting under Mount Fuji, which I talked about in the article. It is about starting to see more and more jobs given to the AI, to the robots, to the drones. CEOs of the biggest companies know today that they can be easily replaced in 5 years from now.
Yep. And I have this book. I have this spot marked because it's like profound. This is in volume 9, and it's when Weef's Illuminati Hariri claims that many people will become part of the useless class once AI takes over the economy. He is hinting at another globalist ideology based on elitism. So you've been exposing this stuff for a long time.
But you see, the thing is, you know, Michael, sometimes I think, is it good to announce these things, but then nobody really takes notice of them?
I've known that. I've noticed that too. It's frustrating, right?
It's a little bit frustrating. I mean, you are like left with, yes, okay, your let's say your, between brackets, acolytes or supporters or readers who are definitely more prone to follow what you're writing, and of course they understand, and it means that they are aware, but they are a minority. I mean, a book like this should be read by millions of people, no?
Yeah.
But in the end, it's.
I mean, you're like getting like incredible. I mean, a lot of people are buying your books. You're like on Amazon. You're like they're the top all the time. You come out with a new book, it's like it's at the top for a long time.
No, and I tell you one thing that maybe not many people know, that in secret, a lot of Hollywood stars read my books.
Oh yeah.
A big Hollywood stars. I can't divulge the names because I will be.
Well, yeah. I was surprised. I went to an event a few years ago, and they all came up. They're all like following me. I'm like, what? Like, can you come out and train us how to shoot? And I'm like, I don't know about that, but there's a lot of them that do.
But they will never do a photo with you because they will be like, no.
Yeah, they don't. They're not open about it. No.
They're not open about it. They might have your book on the shelf and everything. But they are like, Leo, no, we can't expose ourselves. We can't.
Exactly.
So I have a lot of people like that, but of course they are keeping it wrapped between. I think that now we will see a change, though, also in Hollywood and in the remains of Hollywood. Now, I don't know if there is going to be an industry any longer, because already the AI had been, like I explained in Volume 8, hitting very hard the industry, and that's why there were all those strikes and stuff, and there was a lot of and like I said, Newsom has not helped anybody. Newsom has made things worse with all the restrictions. Now he said he's lifting the restrictions to reconstruct LA, but is for him and his friends who have the money to go around and offer, like I said earlier, $750,000 for maybe a big home mansion that costs $5 million or $10 million. What we're going to see now is, of course, speculation. There is, when I was here in October, I was very lucky to have been invited by Donald J. Trump's team to Coachella. He invited me, and me and my wife. I still have here the press pass that was given.
Oh, nice.
And I went there, and I was actually quite impressed that they even knew who we were. I mean, me and my wife we do our little show on YouTube and stuff, and I've been writing my books. But yes, okay, but I never expected that Trump staff will actually invite me and wanted to have me in the backstage with them. And it was a great experience. But during that speech that Trump gave here in Coachella, he specifically talked about the water problem. He called Governor Newsom, of course, new scam. He talked about this small fish that, of course, seems to be the problem that has brought these projects to bring the water from Northern California here into Southern California, which would be of great benefit. And he was very adamant about doing this because of the dangers. And he had actually even said earlier on, always here in California, that this was imperative to create this new water conducts that will bring all this water from. We as a state, California, and of course now I've been living here since 2019, so I'm a Californian now. And as you know, I gave up also my Italian citizenship last year, so I'm only American after I acquired my American citizenship. I voted for the first time, and I'm glad I voted for Donald J. Trump. So it was a great honor to vote for the first time for somebody you really held in high esteem.
Yep.
And like I said, also, I think that it was really important that when people told me, why are you going to California? I said, I'm going to California. And I wrote this, actually, if you remember, also in volume 4 of my Confessions. I wrote specifically saying, I'm here because if you have to cure an illness, you have to go where the illness is actually being developed. It's a little bit like the Wuhan virus, yes, it came from China. It came from a lab. And if we want to know more about it, we should go there and study it, study where it comes from. So for me, coming to California is basically the place where the woke virus has originated. And if you want to heal it, you have to be here. You can't be in Florida. You can't be anywhere else. So I decided to come here. And I'm glad that I came here because now the GOP and Trump have got great results. I was active, even before I became America, I was active with the local GOP for the Newsom recall. And this guy was a dictator.
Yeah.
Imagine this. When he was re-elected to his position, he managed to brush off the recall. Nobody was allowed to criticize him on YouTube. You will be banned. I dared doing that simply by showing some local news about certain things that went on. Boom, immediately I received a strike. He has the courage in a crisis like this to call the White House, and while he's talking with that idiot of Joe Biden, he is saying that we need to keep under control the disinformation about the wildfires. If Trump didn't win, we will be living in a dystopic society by now. There will be no more freedom. Eventually, probably even X will have capitulated to the request or other platforms that tried to guarantee us some kind of freedom, because Facebook wasn't. And of course now, yes, Mark Zuckerberg wants to save his legacy, and he has suddenly changed. But we know what he has done in the last few years. A lot of livelihoods were lost. I was blocked for months on end for simply discussing Hunter Biden's laptop and actually and transmitting on my Facebook the Chinese intelligence guy that was apparent. Hunter talking about this Chinese intelligence guy, the Secret Service head or whatever. Only because of that, they banned me for months.
Wow.
And in fact, one thing I noticed that I think
still, yeah, that's another problem.
No, but one thing that I noticed about the interview that was given by, especially the interview that was given by Zuckerberg to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan seems to not understand that Facebook was doing the same things that Twitter was doing at the time when it was still Twitter. And it was doing it also in regard to Hunter Biden's laptop. And if I was personally Joe Rogan, I would have dig deeper and ask Zuckerberg more questions in relation to that, because that was the biggest cover-up that created, the basis for Biden to win again. Those 50 intelligence guys who signed that thing saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinfo was the basis for them to win the election once again, and to take it from Donald J. Trump, who was the guy who should have won and be the president in 2020. However, now Zuckerberg wants to change. Of course, he wants to change. 2 years ago, if you remember, 2 or 3 years ago, Trump said, we will arrest you. We will arrest you. So, he's scared.
Whoa, wait, yeah.
Trump said, I'm going to arrest you. And the guy, the first thing he did was to go to Mar-a-Lago and, of course, offering him $1 million for the inauguration, offering him. Yeah. But I mean, I'm glad also that maybe Zuckerberg, like many people who arrive to a certain age, when you get 40, they say you get to be a bit more conservative and understand certain things. Maybe he has understood that a lot of the values that he was kind of defending on his platform were completely wrong. And
I think he's CIA controlled. I think the CIA blew Facebook up so they could spy on us.
That is something that I said in 2012. I was invited by Berlusconi's TV channel, Italia Uno, on national TV in Italy. And this was before Snowden. And I said, all the Arab Spring Revolution, everything is organized by the CIA on Facebook. And they have these maps and stuff, and they control them. So I said, and I actually wrote about it many years ago. So the thing is not a novelty for me. Now the novelty is that probably he knows that once Trump comes into power, all these federal institutions will have to be reformed. I mean, we know the level of sheer injustice of the FBI, almost treated like some kind of Stasi secret police from Eastern Germany or the KGB. I mean, people arriving in your home because of a post or something, or because you have even got close to Capitol Hill on the 6th of January. I mean, I know about people who never went into the Capitol Hill on the 6th of January 2021, who were simply close. But because you see their cell connected on the phone to the area, they had the FBI interviewing them. And I have, of course, people instead who went inside there and had their life completely ruined and ended up in prison. I had one guy who entered Nancy Pelosi's office, who he used to be actually a journalist. He used to have a digital radio. I used to broadcast on it. And he was actually a black guy. And he was kind of like, he said, no, but I don't think they will do anything because I'm press. I went there as a journalist. I have a radio, a legitimate radio on the internet. They arrested him. He was completely ruined. And now he's basically, poor guy, he's actually homeless even because they don't let him leave the city where a mess, a complete mess.
I think that's what's happening with a lot of these people that, if you will, leftists who voted for Gavin Newsom. There's been reports that 70% of people in LA voted for Gavin Newsom, voted for Mayor Bass, voted for Obama and for Biden. So they're kind of getting what they voted for, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure because remember when we did a show together, it was you, Juan O'Savin, and Ole Demigard. Juan and I were just like in awe. You guys are like blah, 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 back and forth. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are like, trying to outdo each other with all their information. But I had him on last night and we were talking about a lot of this stuff. And Juan, I had him on earlier in the day, and Juan said that they have the goods on Newsom, that he did not win the last recall. They have all the info on that, and they're going to reveal that soon. So right now, I'll share the screen real quick. They're doing another recall. They started because they have to get the votes. I'm sure they're going to get them to recall Gavin Newsom, and I don't think they're going to get away with cheating on this one. What do you think?
I participated actively, like I said, to the first recall. I actually even gave a small speech here in Palm Desert, which is a place notoriously connected to the Republican Party. But we, like I said, after there was only censorship and the whole thing seemed rigged to the extent that many people were simply saying, okay, we're just going to give up on any hope of getting rid of this guy.
And that's the problem.
I always said one thing.
Larry Elder, I knew Larry Elder won. I know he won. So
but one thing I said always to all my friends who live in other states, I always said, listen, it's important to fight for California, because, like I said, if the evil, like wokeism, generates from here, I mean, aside from historically generating from the Frankfurt School and, of course, developing through them into America, blah, blah, blah. But California it's been the laboratory for many things, including the New Age movement, which is part of this whole New World Order setup and this one world religion that they're trying to put together. So California...
I used to be so into that when I was in California, and that's what I loved about California. It was very, free, open-minded, and that's the old California. Now it's like, shoot, they got controlled all that. But I never
think that things will change now, Michael, because
was it hijacked? Jeez.
I think that things will change because on the 5th of November, 2024, things changed in California. 37% of people voted for Donald J. Trump. Most counties outside of the big cities like LA and San Francisco voted for the Republican Party. In fact, you can see the whole map of California started to turn red. This is a state that has not always been historically Democrat. I mean, we had Nixon, we had Reagan, we had a history that goes back decades in which the Republican Party was actually in control of California.
Totally.
Of course, things have changed. Since the globalists have decided that the party of choice is the Democrats. But there was a time in which the globalists were actually working at the Bohemian Grove and the Bohemian Club with the Republican Party. And it was a different Republican Party, as we know, because it generated monsters like George W. Bush. But George W. Bush or his father are the typical example of those neocons that still, unfortunately, exist to a certain extent, that are the old way. And the old way was really about no difference between Democrats and Republicans. It was about the illusion of democracy. You see, in 2024, that's no longer possible because people are much more into having the information, what is happening, curious, especially after the pandemic and the level of oppression that we lived during the pandemic. People are prone to be more political, let's say. Of course, the left says, oh, this divides the country. Oh, this divides. And then, everything is fine in democracy as long as you align with their own thought. And this happens, for example, in Europe. In Europe now at the moment, we have the European Union, which is completely controlled by these forces, these Jesuits, this black aristocracy, these negative forces that have simply transformed the old monarchies either in constitutional monarchies or in republics that don't have a constitution like the United States. So the Italian Republic, for example, doesn't guarantee you the freedom of speech you have in the United States. That's why, as you know, I had to flee Italy. And Europe nowadays, it's the place where if you vote in a way they don't like, they will disregard the elections. The Romanians have marched 100,000 minimum, and people are saying much more than that, only a few days ago, because they said, this presidential election is null because the candidate is too close to Russia, and so we have to redo the elections in a few months. And that is Romania. But you will see what happens in Germany. In Germany, Elon Musk, as you know, has interviewed the head of the Alternative for Deutschland. And in Germany, you will see that if Alternative for Deutschland wins, they will say, oh, these elections are null. We have to go back. So they are working in a way that either the people like, for example, a lot of people tell me, oh, but in Italy you have a conservative now, like Giorgia Meloni, who is also very friendly with Elon Musk. And
yeah. They seem to get along pretty good, huh?
Yeah. Well,
Meloni, is she on the right?
I know Meloni since I was a kid.
Wow.
Because She basically, her sister is married with a guy that went to school with my brother, who is a minister now for his government, who is best friend of my brother. So my mother and my brother are co-founders of her party. So I know them. I know very well. But I tell you, and I say that even to my mother, so I don't have a problem, or even to my brother. The system is so rigged in Italy that when the Meloni arrived into power, she can only do certain things.
Yes.
But if she wants to stay in power, she can't do other things.
Right.
So at that point, in Italy, you have a president who is not elected by the people, by the way, just so people understand the structure. He's elected by the Senate, but it's basically a fake election. It's just like rigged. The system is rigged. And it's rigged because in 1946, the Americans, who were led by the Democratic Party at the time, decided that Italy couldn't be a monarchy any longer. And so on the 2nd of June 1946, they did this poll to let the Italians decide between republic and monarchy, but it was tricked by the OSS, that later became the CIA. And they knew that more than 50% of Italians didn't read or write. So they went around the homes and said, put it here, mark here for monarchy. And it was republic. And so the monarchy was casted aside. Now people would say, but don't you prefer a republic than a monarchy? Well, yes, but not with the fascist laws left in place that were there with Mussolini. So, I mean, what they did was they left the old rules, the old laws, and then replaced the whole judiciary system with a bunch of leftists and Freemasons, progressive Freemasons. And so the system is rigged. And you can have Meloni, but it's basically Meloni's compromised. And everybody knows it. In fact, Meloni has received Zelensky only 4 days ago. And the Italian president has received Zelensky 3 days, and they applauded him, Zelensky, and they've been giving. And imagine this, the Italians give money.
Oh, they did the same in the U.S. They applauded him in the U.S. too. So.
No, it's terrible. But in the US, we have an opposition to all this. And once Trump is in power, he will have to deal with his promises. And the promise is to finish and end this war. That's why they will probably meet up either in Switzerland or Slovakia or wherever they want with Putin, and the whole thing will finish. But
do you think that could happen with Meloni? Good. I mean, I think she's got, I don't know. I mean, you would obviously know better than probably just about anybody. But if she were given the correct backing,
I'm really disappointed by the Meloni and her party and what they did, because the level of compromise. I mean, if they were real conservatives, they would have done. They would have acted like the Republicans acted here in America, who are backing Trump, saying we are against any further involvement in this absurd war and against Russia, because Italy had a lot of interest with Russia. We lost a lot of money, a lot of tourism, and in the end, what did we gain? Imagine this: the Italians have a top secret act, meaning that all the weapons and money that we give to Ukraine is secreted. We don't know. The people don't know what we sent to Ukraine. While here in America, every time we give, I don't know, 500 million, a billion, 2 billion to that idiot of Zelensky, it appears on the newspaper. And or if we give them this or this other military equipment, is of course registered and approved with the Congress. And so you know as a citizen. In Italy, they have done a special thing thereby the Italians are not allowed to know what we sent to Ukraine.
So Meloni and Viktor Orban at one point seemed to be really tight, but maybe Viktor got wind of,
Viktor Orban is one thing. He's completely a different kind of thing. In fact, Viktor Orban has created and founded in Austria a base for a different organization structure, also at the European level, with a hardcore right that believes in the values of Donald J. Trump. Viktor Orban has worked with Donald J. Trump actively. And in fact, if Putin is now coming to the table, it's because of Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban has done a lot of good work. That is the disappointment
Right,
that many people like me have. Meloni instead was the one who was like babysitting Joe Biden at the G7 when he went off with the parachute people. You remember that scene? And then Meloni picked him up and he was like lost and all that. Meloni is only capable of continuing being the leader of Italy simply because she is intimately involved with Elon Musk. And I want to say more, just intimately, very intimately.
Interesting.
So, I mean, and because of that, she was able to go to Mar-a-Lago recently, and of course, they worked out. The thing is this: okay, Italy, like most countries in Europe, but especially Italy in particular, which had a special role during the stay behind Gladio days and Anticom and all that. The Gladio stay behind operations or whatever. Italy was at the center of all this. And of course, Italy. Okay, so what happened is that this role, after the end of the Cold War, kind of faded. And of course, Italy lost any kind of sovereignty when they gave up the lira for the euro. So now everything is controlled by Brussels, meaning it's controlled by Germany and France, which are the leading nations. However, these leading nations have some serious problems now because they have married totally the Joe Biden administration and their position. And Meloni also by supporting this hideous Zelensky. But the difference is that Trump knows very well that Italy doesn't have any sovereignty, that is America that is controlling it behind the scene.
Wow.
They don't have 1 inch of sovereignty. It's like this. If Italy says tomorrow morning, instead of Meloni, we want this other guy, they will have to change the guy. And in fact, when Trump won in 2016, there was an anti-Trump leader in Italy, and after a few weeks, he was out immediately. This is the level of influence that America has.
Wow.
France is a little, and Germany, you have to understand one thing. Italy, Germany, and Japan are the defeated nations of the Second World War. They have no longer any sovereignty from the moment they have been defeated. They are simply, Germany wasn't allowed to have any form of Freemasonry if not controlled by the United States. And so they formed a group called the United Grand Lodges of Germany, controlled by the United States. France is different. France is a little bit different because you see, France has a history that goes back to Benjamin Franklin, a history that goes back to the French Revolution as well as the American Independence days. So France is the one that has given the Statue of Liberty. It's a little bit different. France is a different kind of situation. But also France is a home of the Illuminati just as bad as Germany. Germany and France are the homes of the Illuminati. Historically speaking, that's where communism developed. You see, this ideology that we are trying to fight today was born there, was born within the Illuminati, and then it spread of course, Adam Weishaupt was German, so then he led the basis. It was a disciple of his who founded the League of the Just that published Karl Marx Manifesto. But at the same time, it was the French Freemasons, like I explain in my books, that experimented the early forms of communism in the Paris Commune, for example, at the end of the 19th century. And it was an experiment that Karl Marx liked very much. And that experiment also, the Illuminati were capable in France, and I explain, as you know, this in my books, of breaking from traditional Freemasonry with the Grand Orient of France and creating a more progressive form of Freemasonry that didn't force people to believe in God. So suddenly you had atheist Freemasonry. So
So
this
it looks like they're all under attack there throughout Europe, because you see Macron and his husband wife. It's under attack, and who knows how long that's going to last. Now I want to.
Who, by the way, he met in a Jesuit school. You know the whole thing.
Jesuit. How about that? There you go.
Yeah,
Good reveal. Good reveal. So what do you think about this one German chancellor candidate? What's her name? Alice Weidel. She's saying that she's going to restart the Russian pipelines, and she's going to turn back the nuclear power on. She's going to get rid of the windmills. What do you think her chances are?
It depends from what Trump does here, and if Trump really is strong enough to start also imposing his policies in Europe. Just going to the Europeans this time, not like the last time when they were laughing in his face, when he was actually telling them. You remember there was that famous scene in which he was talking about their dependency from Russia, and they laughed literally in his face. I think it was during his speech at the United Nations or so. And they literally laughed in his face. This time is different. This time we know that Trump has another kind of mandate. This time Trump needs to be not only perceiving his expansionist ambitions, which are completely justified because we need Greenland if we want to fight China, especially for further technological developments due to the rare minerals that Greenland has. And also, of course, the strategic value of Panama, as well as the treacherous danger that Canada, because nobody seems to remember that 5 years ago, Canada was
on this stuff. Oh my God, you have such good insight. Good for you. God.
No, but you remember 5 years ago.
Brains on Leo. Good job.
Thank you. No, but China was basically aligning with Canada and doing a co-military, their military exercises together.
Yes, for years now. Yep.
I mean, that is insane.
Totally.
Canada is our neighbor. What are they doing? So I think that it would be important, aside from this expansionism, and of course, that is fully justified on Trump's side. And I hope that Greenland, the people of Greenland, who a poll recently said want to join the United States with all the benefits they will have, and so it's a great idea.
Yeah, I even thought that Congress is like even paving the way for it. For what they're saying is buying Greenland, or I don't know what that's about, but so I guess Congress is in the process of paving the way for that deal. I think it's going to go through, and I agree that Canada probably, and the Panama Canal. Do you see any other things that the United States is going to move on?
No, I think that aside from these expansionist important strategies of expansion, I think that the other thing is to reassess the importance and relevance of America within Europe. Now, this is important strategically because Europe is, of course, going to either fall under the control of China, or either, like in the past, under the energetic control of Russia once things quiet down and go back to normal and Gazprom starts again its regular operations. You were mentioning it just a moment ago, the promises that Alternative for Deutschland has done in regard to this possibility. But that means that the Alternative for Deutschland is basically paving the way for still a lot of dependence from Russia energetically, which is okay, because that dependence from Russia has guaranteed the economic growth and prosperity of Germany for so many years. So there is no alternative to that. And so I think the importance is to get all along and know also our limits. However, I also think that Americans need to understand that Europe is not simply a place to go on holiday and have a nice time eating some pizza in Italy, or going to eat some snails in France, or going to experience the windmills in Holland. Europe is a strategically important political place that we need to reacquire also ideologically, because ideologically we have lost Europe. Europe, after the Cold War ended, has started to ideologically go left. So much to the left that nowadays, when you go to the American embassy in Rome, or the American embassy in Berlin, or the American embassy in any other capital in Europe, you will have people working there, Americans, who are leftist, Marxist, of the worst kind. And this socialist / communist, because communism is always the ultimate realization of communism is the ultimate realization of socialism, basically. When they're saying socialism is people who want to impose socialism to then impose always later on with their force their leftist ideal becoming communist. So I think that is strategically important for Trump to go back into Europe, ideologically changing and reacquiring that also from the young generations. You see, I noticed one thing here, Michael, a difference with Europe in the last with the last election and with the last, let's say, with Trump's reaffirmation in the last 2 years. We have seen also a lot of young people who are finally realizing the benefits of being a conservative, of having a conservative mindset, of abandoning that leftist ideologic nonsense that they had learned during their time in college or in the campuses, where unfortunately they are still brainwashed by these leftist professors. Now, those leftist professors operate under the Jesuits. And under the Jesuits, they simply they bring this progressive nonsense to life. And so basically we send a guy to school and he comes out of the school and he's no longer the child our child that could be brought up with certain values. We send him to these schools and he comes out completely brainwashed. Now, we saw, though, that with this last election, even the younger people have voted for Trump. And I think this is very good. It has demonstrated that the young people are not like they used to be before, brainwashed. And this needs to happen, though, also in Europe, because all the young people in Europe are unfortunately brainwashed by leftist ideals.
So what do you think about Sir Keir Starmer and possibly Farage? I think Farage might replace him. What are your thoughts on Keir Starmer? Now, Keir Starmer, I think he was involved with Jimmy Savile, who's obviously been exposed as a massive pedophile.
In general, he's a laborist, and Labour is a party of socialism. And like I said, the ultimate goal of socialism is always communism. So he is a communist. That's it, if you want to simplify it. However, the problem with Great Britain is that their two-party system is rigged in a way that is very difficult to let a third party in. It's a little bit like the United States. You have the Republicans, you have the Democrats. But when it comes to the Libertarians, it's almost close to nothing, the possibilities they have to do to change anything or to. So now that's why it's very critical importance that Nigel Farage has large finances, and that's why it was very important that Elon Musk finances Nigel Farage. However, now, because of the whole Tommy Robinson thing, this might not happen, and so it's not very good how the situation is looking like in the United Kingdom.
I was like, wow, what happened there? Like Elon Musk, backed Robinson, and then Farage just blew up. It's like, what? You just blew your chances, dude.
Listen, the problem is this with Tommy Robinson. I know Tommy Robinson many years, you know, as a guy who was active in the right. I had people that knew him because they were in my lodges, which I used to go in England. There were people from the New Right, so I had connections, and I followed him for a number of years. I understand why people like Nigel Farage have a problem with Tommy Robinson. And I know what Piers Morgan says about it. He criticizes very much Tommy Robinson because he says, you know, he's been arrested for this, for that, and for all the other. However, I'm not so critical because I know that when you go and touch the Muslim reality in England, they will bring against you every possible thing they have. Okay? The last time I was invited in a lodge in England, I went there and I gave a speech and I said, listen, you want to continue to being Freemasons? Well, you should tackle the Muslim problem, which is becoming a real problem. Otherwise, you're not going to have the possibility of gathering here freely as Freemasons, because they're going to bomb you just like they did in other countries, or they're going to prohibit you to even meet. So, and as soon as I said these things, the worshipper master of this lodge that guested me immediately was like, oh, maybe your time is up. We are in a rush, you know, kind of like they were cutting me because they didn't want to hear it. And it was really, really disappointing.
That was part of the plan. That was part of the plan to bring him in.
No, but the thing is this. I lived 8 years in England. My mother is England. My mother is from London. So I know England very well. It's almost a home for me. No, you live many years. Your mother is from London. I lived 8 years in London. I lived and worked in London many years, and I saw a complete change. My wife joined me. She visited with me London for the first time with me, and then she went to London a few times with me. She was shocked herself by seeing. I was like, I mean, we went to the second floor where my aunt had this apartment where we were staying. On the first floor, there was a Muslim who had put the sign of Allah on his door, you know, just like, I was, what the heck is this in England? You know, all those proper British houses are very nice, or very, it's like where the pub was on the corner, there was a halal meat shop. There were no longer any English references. All the shops have been bought up by Muslims. The mayor is Pakistani mayor in London. So you are talking about a country that is literally taken over. Now, you know that I published a book not so long ago, volume 10.
Yes. Which, volume 10.
Excellent. If you have it there, I have it somewhere here. But
yeah, I'll show it.
Yes. This book. Now, in this book, I explain why this happened.
Time in the Middle East, and you nailed a lot of stuff. Good job.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, we are still, as you know, in an eternal chaos in the Middle East. But the thing is, I spoke in this book about what's happening in England. I explained that England in the 50s, immediately after the Second World War, needed actual people to work to reconstruct a country that had been bombed to the extent of destroying the whole city. I mean, you have to understand, the people maybe, I mean, my mother was born in London and she was raised in London, and she still tells me to this day, she's still alive, the stories of her under the table with the bombs coming through that the Germans launched these missiles that then became, by the way, the basis for the future space program now, because then all those scientists were brought to America after the war. But my mother was traumatized like many others, and since I started going to England when I was a little kid, I remember seeing whole parts of London still destroyed by the war.
Wow.
But for them to reconstruct this city, they had to bring in millions of Muslims from what used to be their empire. The British Empire started to bring in millions of Pakistanis, millions of Muslims from various countries of this great former empire. The result is now they've taken over the whole country. And Tommy Robinson is denouncing this whole thing. Now, there is unfortunately, Tommy Robinson and people like Piers Morgan will never be able to get on well because they come from two different social classes. In England, Michael, it's not like in America. People are brought up with different social classes that recognize themselves in the level, in the accent they have. If you go to certain schools, you talk in a certain way. You talk like the Queen, like you have a certain accent. If you are brought up in East London, oh, mate, you talk in another way. So England is very, very classist. Okay? And you have certain schools where all the aristocrats go, where they're formed. In volume 11 of my Confessions, as you know, I explained all this in regards to the initiation of people like Boris Johnson or Cameron. I show also the pics of their initiation days in their secret societies, like this one, where you have here that Boris Johnson, for example, here, down here. And their initiations were like putting their own penis inside the head of a pig. And
Wow.
then also setting on fire 50 pounds in front of a homeless person in a manner reminding us a little bit of Clockwork Orange, if you know what a little bit.
Yep.
So the way that England is so classist, it has permitted, though, this paradoxically, amongst this very, let's say, this elite, a sense of, they have a sense of guilt of what they did to the people abroad they conquered for their British Empire. And for that reason, this guilt has generated this leftism, even amongst the British, peers, the British aristocracy. They have this guilt, this sense of, oh, we did something wrong to them, so we have to be good to them. So Tommy Robinson is simply denouncing something that's been going on since the 90s, that a lot of white girls from lower classes, working class, in the suburbs were systematically raped by these Muslims that arrived in those areas, raped these girls, and then started to expand their control until these areas have literally been brought under Sharia control in England.
Yes.
And I think the fact that Piers Morgan aligns with Nigel Farage is because they think, first of all, that Tommy Robinson is a working class thug, a hooligan.
Yeah.
And for that reason, they will never really be able to get along. So that's
wow. Wow, that's so perfect. Because I've been to England and I travel well and I get treated well. But then I remember asking questions about certain things in there, and it's like even the normal people, I would say, are like, oh, they're the lower class. I'm like, what? You guys still think that way? What are you doing? It's like, it's very ingrained. Yeah.
Listen, I don't usually say this because I never wrote about it because even myself, and I have to admit this. My mother is cousin to the Queen of, my grandfather was cousin to the Queen of England, and so I wrote this in my books, in my bio and everything. But I never said the fact that because I was half Italian, I was treated like I was some kind of B citizen, some kind of like
wow,
they were racist against me in the British elite because I was half Italian. Nowadays, this will not happen because the Italians are regarded as not only acceptable, but they are, or in England nowadays, they are very fond of Italian food, Italian culture, and a lot of the elite marries with the Italian elite. But at that time,
Gelato, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. Yeah.
Okay, my father was a Sicilian. He was not very tall and he looked very dark in the skin. He could be a Turk, he could be a North African. He was really dark, okay? I remember the discussion that him and my mother had when I was a kid. And I remember in England when we used to go around, and also in certain contests, of these British aristocrats in their homes, cottages, in their parties with their fancy sandwiches and all the rest. I was always never integrated. I was treated bad, even by people from my own family. So it was just because I was half Italian at the time. So imagine the level of racism there is there. I mean, we are talking about some serious, not only classism, but also racism. So for me, it was, I remember when, and this works both ways though. In the 90s, in the middle of the 90s, I went to live in London. And the first thing that a guy because I opened a record label, I was in the music business, no? And one guy came to me and said, listen, mate, don't talk like your mom. Because because my mother talks with the proper English accent, said, don't talk with that accent, because music business is working class, is people, they don't like that kind of,
Wow.
Of course, if you are Lord, like, some relative, in England, I have a relative, that were Lord of this or that. If you are that kind of thing, then you can get away with anything because you are a Lord. But the title goes only to the first in line. So then, for example, I don't have a title because of that, no? And so when you don't have a title in England and you are in a business like the music business, they said it's better that you talk with your Italian accent. And for that reason, I maintained since then this accent I have. And I never made an effort to talk because I didn't like the accents that I had, and I kept this one. There was, I remember, a very famous record producer who is now very famous here in America, also called Harvey. He said, Leo, just keep it like this. That's great. And it's going to work out fine.
It's worked good for you. Yeah. Everybody likes it. Yeah. It's just good.
But if I made the effort to transform myself with a British accent, immediately that will define my class. It's not like America. I mean, in America, the accent can be rather a southern accent rather than a northern accent or this and that. These are like the parts, but it's not defining if you are a working class guy or if you are a middle class or if you are a member of the aristocracy. There is not any distinction. So yes, England has this problem, and Tommy Robinson has nailed down the problem of the Muslims. But it's very difficult for him to have a credibility, and Nigel Farage, of course, doesn't want him involved with his party. So, of course, Elon Musk, who comes from South Africa, he has some understanding of the British system, but not completely, has now created a problem there, because we should all be working together to defeat the labor establishment and to defeat also the woke Masons in England. Because I was a Mason in England, and I'm ashamed that I was a Mason in England nowadays. Nowadays, the United Lodge of England lets you in the United Lodge of England is only for men. But nowadays, if you dressed up as a man and you are a woman, you can, and you are doing hormonal treatments, you can actually participate. If you are a drag queen or transgender, you can participate in the United Lodge of England. It's crazy. I mean, at that point, just make it for open to men and women, and that's it. not that you suddenly have this new woke ideology that permits transgenders to come into your lodge, either if they're men or women, and all this gender fluidity bullshit. So I think that regarding the center of this evil, where it's all coming from, we always said that the Freemasons depend from England.
So I just want to share real quick. This is a Freemason headquarters in Hemet, California. Notice that blue color. We know that the blue is one of those colors that the direct energy weapon.
Direct energy weapons, it's reflective. Well, one thing I can say about that, also here in the area, for example, there is not in Palm Springs, but in Yucca Valley, they have the same kind of color on the buildings. However, there is also a symbolic meaning, because in Freemasonry, the blue lodges are in fact called blue lodges. So you have that link with the color. Now, having said that, there is two possibilities here in regards to how these files have developed. Either by direct energy weapons, or either, and this has been proven to be also a big possibility, by simply giving 10 homeless people who have entered this country even illegally the possibility of setting on fire Los Angeles, by giving them the possibility maybe tomorrow of a citizenship for them and their families, or money.
Yep.
Because when they find a guy who was homeless with a blowtorch trying to, you saw the images on the internet, and they were beating him up. Do you think he was the only one?
No. They've caught many of those guys. Well, the meth population, the homeless is, a lot of those people are in drugs. So people that are in meth, one of the things they like to do is destroy things, and they like to do the fire thing. So you have all these homeless people everywhere, 20,000 plus homeless people.
And in fact, the first thing that Newsom has said is that he's already planning new buildings that will be able to then guest all these homeless. So, I mean, then you see that the smart city, that the smart LA 2028 is not only a project, but a project that includes also their homeless crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Leo, I just want to, just before, I got another show, but before we go, you talk about in book 10, where you go into the Muslim stuff that we were just talking about, the very first chapter, the birth of Islam and the secret societies that manipulated it. So we're not, although people
going back, for example,
manipulated, but there's a bigger thing that's involved, with manipulating the Muslim culture.
Well, I mean, think about this, and I write it in volume 10. The first guy who opened a mosque in Great Britain was a Freemason.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that.
I mean, the Freemasons, the Muslims officially are the ones who always hate the Freemasons, accuse them of being Zionists and all this rubbish. Exactly. But then they, and you read this book, so you know what I read here. I brought the evidence, and no Muslim has been able to debunk this evidence. They actually have even left good reviews because they see that historically is accurate. Well, Freemasonry is, of course, as you know, connected to Islam, and for this reason, when I hear all this, when I went into the Middle East. The many times I went to the Middle East, and you see how they are always accusing the Freemasons and the Zionists of conspiring.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one thing that I would like to remind to these people is leaders of the Muslim communities are Freemasons.
Yeah.
That's it. And in England, that is actually happening because, for example, when they were, I don't know if you remember, a few decades, think about 20 years ago, there was clashes in England, and they had to intervene, and there were clashes also with the Muslim community. And well, the solution was made inside the lodges. They called the heads of the community inside the lodge, and they said, sort out this mess. And they were, so they need to understand, the Muslims, that they are also being manipulated. They are not outside of this manipulation. This is very important.
Yeah.
And that's why they should read volume 10 of my confession, because as you know, I have explained all this and all the links with the various secret societies, including Sufism, that a lot of people think is simply, some kind of spiritual quest, but often it has also been used for political reasons and as a political tool by the Freemasons in Europe to destabilize this or this other country in the Middle East, but also in Pakistan. So,
right,
not only in the Middle East.
All right. So, how can people reach you? I got your links. This was a fabulous show as always, man. We got to do these at least once a month. You got
so much. It's always,
if you want. LeoZagami.com. And then, of course, your books are on Amazon.
There were some people who didn't, who tuned in the show from Italian on my channel, broadcasting, and they couldn't understand while I was not giving you enough space because they thought that you were the guest, not I was the guest. Sorry, guys, but I was actually the guest. I was answering Michael's question. But I think that actually you and me can have definitely always a very interesting dialogue, because with our own past experiences, we can benefit people. And now in this moment, it's very important to understand that we are in front of a great opportunity here in California that could actually, like I said, transform maybe the political landscape and come to our benefit. And at the same time, you're showing, of course, my wife's
cookbook.
Well, because this is another important.
Oh my God!
And we are what we
really great recipes. I'm gonna be doing these later.
You remember what I wrote in this book? I said we are what we eat. Because I was talking about the insects, the lab-grown meat, and all the things. Now, one thing is that RFK Jr. really needs to clean up this country in regards to the quality of food sold in our supermarkets, because that's very important.
Totally.
And when we go to restaurants these days, we are often eating cheap material, genetically modified material. So if you want to really eat healthy stuff, do it at home and do it with the Zagami family cookbook. And of course, Michael, whenever you are in California, you and Tracy, you are welcome to join me and Christy for a great feast.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Questions you have, if you when you are making a meal out of this book, please contact me directly. I will give you any tips. But I mean, it's really explained clearly, and things that seem complicated, like making fresh pasta, which people even in Italy at times are kind of like the new generations are a little bit skeptic. They are simple if they are explained in the right way. And in this book, Christy made a great job in
she really did. Yeah.
And also doing pizza, because, I when I was here the first 2 years, I have to admit, Michael, I tried every single frozen pizza in America.
No.
And they are all garbage.
Yep.
That's it. So no longer I will eat frozen pizza, only fresh pizza. Homemade pizza, let's say.
Fantastical. Yeah. So the most amazing pizza I had was in Naples. I was like, oh my God.
Man, you're talking about the inventors of pizza. And I mean, you have to understand one thing, though. That is Napolitan pizza. Then you have 3 types of pizza, which I regard as very different, but also very good. The New York pizza, which is in itself a very incredible pizza that came out of the experience of the Italo-Americans. Then you have, of course, Roman pizza, which is completely different from the Napolitan because it's completely thin crust and very crunchy. And instead, then you have the master pizza, which is the Napolitan, of course, the queen of all pizzas, which is Margherita the Regina.
Oh, wow. How about that? Yeah. So I had no idea. Thanks for explaining that. So there you go, everybody. So you learned so much from Leo. It's amazing.
we could do also. You asked me about the Illuminati pasta.
The Illuminati that's the one I'm going to make soon. So it looks really good. It's good. Look at that. I went to a super fresh market as like exceptional pasta, and I'm
going to use a secret though, but I will reveal it only after you eat it, and I can't reveal it before.
I'm going to make that, and I'm going to take a picture and pictures of me eating it and making it, and then I'll send it to you.
Okay. God bless you, Michael. God bless your
All right, God
audience
bless
as
you
well
too.
as
Thanks,
my
Leo.
audience that tuned in. Thank you so much, and we speak soon. Take care.
All right, take care.